When I teach students for the first time DOM manipulation and events, it's always overwhelming. It takes a few tries to really get it. And one thing you may have noticed in the previous videos is that there were a lot of methods that you learned, and the DOM has a lot of them. But you constantly have to check and see if it was compatible with the browsers to make sure it works. So we used websites like caniuse.com to constantly check that we can use those properties. It was a tedious process. A few years ago, the support for these selectors and DOM manipulation techniques were even worse. For example, query selector now is all good, but a few years ago, only a few browsers had them. So what did people do if it was even worse than it is now? Well, there was a library that was created that solved this huge problem. And that was jQuery. You might have heard of it. It's one of the most popular libraries for JavaScript. In 2006, jQuery was introduced to the web development world. It was a library, which means it's just JavaScript, a JavaScript file written by a few people that added a little bit more to the language. So you can do more things. You had more properties, more functions. Its main goal was to make DOM manipulation easier and compatible with all browsers. So they took care of the hard work and browser compatibility issues. Isn't that nice of them? Let's check this W3C example of jQuery. You can see over here that they're loading a script tag with a CDN that is pointed at jQuery minified JavaScript. And jQuery is just this snippet of code. It always has the $ document.ready, which means when the document, the DOM object, is ready, run this function. And inside of it, you could write all this jQuery. So in this case, you can see that we want to select P. This was a jQuery specific syntax. And on click, run this function. So it was the exact same thing as when we did p.add event listener. And then we would do click and then do some sort of a function. So you can see it made things a little bit cleaner to do. And you can do things like this.hide. So if I click over here, it hides, it hides, it hides. That's pretty nice. But jQuery had one issue. It made the code very imperative. And what does that mean? It's a word that you're going to hear a lot when you become a developer. It means that you had to tell the program exactly what to do one by one. This may not seem like a bad idea, but when your websites get big and complicated, it creates a huge mess. One action is dependent on one action, which is dependent on another action, which is dependent on another action. Now, you lose track of what is happening. More errors and more bugs enter your code base, and it becomes really, really complicated. Let me show you an example. We have a simple jQuery code here where we say, again, document ready, function, and then we're selecting article left section. When the click happens, then we check this has a class and we remove class. And I mean, this doesn't look that bad, but it got to points where you had code like this called Pyramid of Doom, where if this happens, you do this, and if this happens, you do this, and if this happens, you do this. And you can imagine if there was another thing that was listening to another event that might have unexpected consequences because this is running and the user is at the same time interacting with the website. And you can see here how much of a mess it is. I mean, this is just an example, but you can see that it's very imperative. If this happens, then do this. And within it, if that happens, then do this, and so on and so forth. It creates a big mess when you have big websites. jQuery was great at the time. It made JavaScript really popular because it was finally easy to make interactive websites, and it did a lot of great things for the industry. However, as time progressed, people found new and better ways to do things. Web browsers adapted new things like query selector. And we even have a website now that compares what you can do with simple JavaScript and HTML and what you can do with jQuery. And most of the things, well, you can do in both, and it's not that different. As times progressed, people found new and better ways to do things. You still have jQuery being used today, but there are fewer and fewer people starting projects that are using jQuery right now. As a matter of fact, the number of job postings with jQuery as a requirement has really gone down, and there's rather a negative view of developers who only know jQuery. This is not to bash the library, it was an important part of JavaScript growth. But in 2018, it isn't that useful of a skill. That is why in this course, we are learning React. React is a library that solves the huge problem of jQuery. Instead of being imperative, it's declarative. We will get into more of the benefits and what that means when we get to the section, but having a historical perspective of where we were and where we are now is important. So remember this. First we had HTML, then CSS, and JavaScript. Then came jQuery to make our JavaScript easier. Then came more libraries that made JavaScript even more fun and easy to work with. From now on, we won't be using DOM manipulation techniques we have learned in this section. Bummer, I know. But I'll show you what we can do better. So stay tuned. It gets way more fun after this. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.